Hello and welcome to NewsClick for our second edition today of the Budget 24-25. I have with us Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, who's been doing a budget for a very long time. Though not as long as I said in my earlier...
About more than 3 decades.
More than three decades. He's being actually a little self-effacing on this. But coming to the budget, and this now has been commented as being a pro-rich budget. Raghav Behel has made that comment, not exactly a leftist. And there are various things in the budget, major elements of the budget, which seem to show that at least for the people who have been losing their share of the income in India's growing economy, and it is growing, that nothing really has been done to correct that. On the contrary, the rich seem to be getting more benefits, while the poor, their benefits actually seem to have been dwindled. Is that a correct evaluation of the budget?
Yes, sure, that's one way of evaluating the budget. Let me elaborate. This is Nirmala Sitharaman's 8th consecutive budget. Of course, it's the first full year budget of the third Modi government. But unlike a long budget that she gave earlier, if I'm not mistaken, that was 2020, when she spoke for 2 hours and 40 minutes. This budget was 1 hour and 14 minutes. And on that occasion, in fact, she couldn't complete her budget. She had to stop in the last few pages. I think the last 2 pages were not read. Be that as it may, this is a relatively trivial point. What is more important is that she has tried to present a very populist budget. Usual things we've done for farmers, for the poor, we've done a lot for women, we're doing a lot for education, health. The actual numbers show that this has not been the case. In fact, the opposite has happened. I'll elaborate on these points a little later, but to return to the point you made. Is this budget progressive or regressive? Or are the tax proposals progressive or regressive? She got the maximum amount of applause when she mentioned the cut in the income tax rate, effective cut in the income tax rate. Let me just read out what she wrote, because she got the maximum sort of applause for what she did. And people were all sort of waiting for this announcement, and everybody seemed to be very happy. But let's put it in a certain perspective. But before I do that, let me just read out what she said. She said essentially that those who are earning up to 12 lakhs per annum, their income, assessable income, taxable income is 12 lakhs. They will now, all below that they won't have to pay any income tax. If you're a salaried taxpayer, then you get an additional, standard deduction of 75,000. So if you're about 1 lakh per month on an average, little more, little less, you don't pay tax. No, if you just exceed it, of course, you'll have to pay the full tax amount. But wait, how many people in India pay tax? We have a population of roughly 140 crore. Out of 140 crore, roughly 8 crore people file tax returns, but they don't all pay tax. Half pay tax and half don't pay tax, although they file the tax returns. So essentially, it's not what you're assuming is that, and this is what Raghav Behel said, that actually India has become the lowest tax jurisdiction for high-income individuals in comparably sized economies. And he raises the question, is this progressive or regressive? He goes on to say that the 1 lakh crore of largesse which is going to be distributed is could it have been done in a more equitable manner? Could it have been distributed in a more equitable manner to benefit more people? He said, yes, you could have done that. If you had just, for instance, reduced the GST rate, the goods and services tax rate. I'll give you one other point. It has been.
And that's an interesting point because income tax can be for the rich
That's
and
right.
not for the poor, while GST is for everybody.
Everybody, it's an indirect tax.
It's an indirect tax, and therefore every person who
Precisely.
buys anything has to pay.
So whether you're
the
Mr.
tax.
Ambani or Mr. Adani or whether you're the poorest of the poor, you still pay the
GST.
tax because it's indirect. Now, the point that you made, you have made an assumption that the revised estimate for the current financial year, which will end on the 31st of March, your total income tax collection, personal income tax collection, would go up by more than 14%, 14.4%. This too after you give away 1 lakh crore. What does this mean? That the lower middle class will pay less and the upper middle class will pay more? But what is very clear is the point that you made. We are not, the inequalities in our country, I don't think they're going to go down because of this budget. So despite all the tall talk that the finance minister has made about helping the poor, the fact of the matter is,
So
the gap will
remains
go up.
same.
Yes, it'll go up.
Up.
Yes, it
It'll go
won't
up.
remain the same.
And in
Yes.
fact, the gap might have reduced if, for instance, more allocation had been made for Manrega, which has not been made.
In fact, if you look at Manrega has been more or less stagnant. And to give you a more precise kind of number,
It's
if
about
you
60,000 crores.
That's correct. No, more than 60,000 crore. It is about, one second, 86,000 crore.
86,000.
Sorry, not 16, 86,000 crore. And you know when...
And you can give a tax benefit of how much? You just said?
1 lakh crore.
1 lakh crore.
Income, personal income tax
Personal
benefits.
income tax.
So the Manrega election, that's the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, the scheme under it, it has stagnated at more or less 86,000 crore per annum. Now, I think we should look very carefully at what has been claimed is going to benefit farmers in this country. Because she spent, I think, the first 10 minutes or a little more than 10 minutes of her speech focusing almost entirely on the farmers. You know, this is what? This is against a certain background. We had an agitation by farmers, the likes of which we have never seen before in this country. Then the 3 bills are withdrawn. This is at the end in December of 2021. But farmers are not happy. Why are they not happy? They're simply not happy because the whole issue of the legal guarantee for the MSP or the minimum support price has not been given. And even there is a standing committee of parliament that have said how you should calculate a remunerative price. But the point is, we have one farmer, Jagjit Singh Daliwal. He's been on a fast for more than 2 months on the issue of legal guarantee for the minimum support price, and the Supreme Court panel had to intervene so that he got medical aid. So the issue of farmers is actually a huge issue. And let me just give you some more figures. If you compare the revised estimate for the current financial year with the budget estimate for next year, the food subsidy has actually come down by 7,830 crore.
Okay.
That's right. And so if you actually factor in inflation, it's come down even more. And so what we are seeing is claims that we are doing a lot for farmers, but actually we're not seeing that happening. In fact, the share of agriculture and the allied sector in employment has gone up from a little over 44% in 2017-18 to 46.1% in 23-24.
Which means more people are forced to go.
That's right. You've had this reverse migration post-COVID. And so what we are right now seeing is that the agriculture is contributing to the economy. It's gone up a little bit to 16% of the gross domestic product. But if you look into account inflation, nothing is happening. And I'll give you one other very, very important point. The finance minister made a big announcement that there is a new scheme which is called the Dhan Dhanya Yojana. Krishi Yojana. where there 100 districts are selected, it means like almost a fifth of all the districts in the country, where there are low crop yields. And she said that it's going to benefit 1.7 crore farmers. But you look carefully at the budget papers, there is no separate budget allocation. So you just make an announcement to grab the headlines, but when you look at the fine print, no special budgetary allocation has been made. So you're going to use the same money and say you're not going to focus on 100 districts and then they are the awkward.
You didn't need to put it in the budget if you're not going to make an allocation. The purpose of the budget is to make an allocation.
One other point. You have a Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, the crop insurance scheme. Its allocation has actually been cut from 15,864 crore to 12,242 crore. So however much this government is claiming that we are doing so much for the farmer, the reality is something else. It's quite different, quite the opposite, I should say. But what is very clear is that Bihar has got a bonanza.
Okay, so the looming elections in Bihar has a role in the budget.
Yes, there's been a mention of one particular scheme that has come up there is the project. I mean, these are states that have been named in the budget. I'm only going by the budget speech. There's a urea project for Assam, and there is this Polavaram irrigation project which will be financed and completed in Andhra Pradesh. But when you look at Bihar, and Bihar assembly elections are supposed to take place either in November or in October of this year, 2025. And you see Nirmala Sitaraman symbolically wore a sari with a Madhuban print. But wait, you get a makhana board. Like you have a rubber board, a coffee board, you get a makhana board. Now makhana, very good food, very healthy food. These are the what were called fox nuts. It's a prickly water lily, the soft round balls that you have of it. And Bihar is the biggest producer, and internationally it's done very well. So this is something to be very welcome, because people wanting health foods, and makhana is high in antioxidants. Doesn't stop there. You are going to have in Bihar a new National Institute of Food Technology, Entrepreneurship and Management. Wait, the existing Indian Institute of Technology at Patna is going to be expanded. You're going to get a new greenfield airport at Bihta in Bihar. The existing airport in Patna is going to be expanded. There is financial aid coming for the Western Kosi Canal project, the restoration of the Eastern Kosi main canal and its system, where there was a devastating floods there were in 2008, and money is going to be spent, and farmers in the Mithilanchal region, 50,000 hectares, they're going to be benefited. So, all right, it's all very clear, we know. Mr. Manish Tiwari said, is questioned, is the budget for Bihar, budget for India? Jairam Ramesh wondered why Andhra Pradesh is so cruelly ignored. Well, the Polavaram irrigation project is there. But the fact is, we all know that Mr. Narendra Modi is dependent on the Telugu Desam party, led by Chandrababu Naidu, and the Janata Dal United, led by Nitish Kumar. They are his biggest supporters, and otherwise, the fact is the
government will fall.
Yes, the Bharatiya Janata Party has, on its own, is 32 below the halfway mark, so it has 240 instead of 272 members of parliament in the Lok
There is
Sabha.
time for the state elections in Andhra Pradesh, so she can be concession.
And then we'll have to wait. Mr. Naidu is wanting a lot of money for the new capital in Amaravati.
Yeah.
He wants that to become the Hong Kong of the east coast of India. So let's wait and watch. The other thing which I think we can have a little discussion is on the whole issue of jobs and whether jobs would be created. Because I think
the key issue, if you want to talk about jobs, is how are you really helping the industry to grow? So on the industrial sector, is there any change that you see? I'm not talking about the nuclear energy is a separate issue. But on the general industry, MSMEs, SMEs, or even big industry, is there any change, anything that directly can help these industries?
I think there is more optics, but there are some concrete measures. Firstly, I think more cheap credit would be given to micro, small, medium enterprises. And I think it's very, very important, and it's about time. I think this government has belatedly recognized that the 1 crore registered MSMEs, employing 7.5 crore persons, generating 36% of our total manufacturing output, and the responsible for 45% of our exports, they need support. They were badly hit by demonetization of November 2016, by the way the GST was implemented, the harsh manner in which the lockdown took place in 2020, early 2020. And so now what is happening there are significant enhancement of credit availability with guarantee cover, credit cards being provided. And what is very, very clear, if you don't do it, all the claims you make about creating jobs and then saying, see the number of people who are self-employed have grown up. They don't have jobs. So there are a whole lot of schemes, fund of funds for startups, scheme for first-time entrepreneurs, measures for labor-intensive sectors, special focus on footwear, leather sectors, toy sector, food processing sectors.
But the crux of this, Paranjoy, is what are the investment allocation that is there in the budget for this money?
There is the money, let's say there's not really much happening on that front. When you look at the total amount that is being spent, yes, in real terms, the expenditure has going to go largely on infrastructure. Let's be very, very...
So for the MSMEs, what you were promising is easier credit. Is that what is being promised?
Essentially that. Total expenditure of the government of India as a percentage of India's national income or gross domestic product, the revised estimate for 24-25 was 14.6%. The budget estimate for 25-26 was 14.2%. So you actually, if you factor in inflation, it's not going up, it's come down. Look, you have spent, if you look at the current revised estimates, you're going to be spending 1 lakh crore less than what you have promised. You're going to cut down transfers to states by more than 1 lakh crore, 1,12,000 crores, if you compare the budget estimate with the revised estimate. And this is, I think, very, very important. Food subsidies, I already mentioned, is down. This is all comparisons between the revised estimate for the current financial year and the budget estimate for the next financial year. I told you food subsidy is down by 7,830 crore. But importantly, education is down by 11,584 crores. Health, 10,992 crore. Subsidy on gas, LPG, cooking gas, liquefied petroleum gas, 2,500 crore. And if you look at the bigger picture and look at the allocations as a whole, allocations for scheduled castes, down by 27,000 crore. Allocations to scheduled tribes, 17,000 crores has come down. Allocation to the northeastern region, down by 13,000 crore. So you can say what you like in your budget speech and say you're working for the poor and you're working for the underprivileged. The budget numbers tell you a very, very different story.
Anything else that you think we should discuss?
There's a lot to discuss, and I don't really know what is important and what is not. The budget speech is very important. Usual story, one section of people will say, wow, what a budget. Another section, well, terrible budget. Let's look at some facts. In the last 5 weeks, we've had 4 individuals who have held the post of Revenue Secretary. I'm just stating facts. Now, there are reasons, there are good reasons, very good reasons perhaps, why they're not there. let's look at what the government's own supporters have said, and they're not leftists. I mean, take what Arvind Subramaniam recently said. He gave an interview to Karan Thapar, and he said that, look, we have three critical challenges ahead of us. This is not my language, his language. And Arvind Subramaniam was a former chief economic advisor of the government of India. He was there from October 2014 to June 2019. Dr. Arvind Subramaniam told Karan Thapar that what is happening in India is not a short-term slowdown, but a structural slowdown, which was obscured, he said, by several reasons, including a recovery from COVID. He says that when you look at what is ailing the economy, the real structural problems, and these are his words, not mine, it's not just lack of demand. Lack of demand due to private investment being weak for a long period of time. Private investment, domestic as well as foreign direct investment, which has been shrinking. So, consumption, according to him, is coming down because growth and investments are not going up and coming down, in fact. It's not the other way around. That's the way he interprets it. And he says that, look, three areas where change is most required. He says the national champions policy. He doesn't name Ambani or Adani, but he says there are regulatory favors. They're given to a few groups. This has a chilling effect on other investors, especially foreign investors. Therefore, the playing field is not level. Second point, he said the state has been weaponized. State with a capital. He says, and this is arbitrarism in the way these are implemented in the political sphere, in the economic sphere, and policies get reversed, policies are not inclusive, there is sometimes overzealous tax enforcement on specific individuals and groups. And I'm sure you know this better than most others. And last but not the least, he says, how can we export more? You say you've opened up, but the world is becoming more protectionist and you have become more protectionist. And there are a whole lot of not just what they say tariff barriers, but non-tariff barriers. There's micromanagement. Say if you import inputs. Now in the name of what you call new forms of protectionism, quality control orders. So you're actually seeing a reversal of these so-called liberalization policies over the last 8 years, 7 to 8 years. This is his view. Whether you'll agree with him or not is another point. But my own view is that, and this is where what Raghav Behel has also agreed, you've given a 1 lakh crore benefit by reducing the income tax regime for the middle classes. Are these really going to benefit society as a whole? I'll go back to where we had started.
It's an important point, and I just would like to add
Please.
one thing which is of interest to me, as you know, that this budget talks about 100 gigawatt boost to the nuclear power plants. And this is essentially means we're going to build 1,000 megawatt plants, hundred of them, in the coming few years, whatever years she hasn't spelled out. Now that capacity, nobody has in the world to put in, unless you take 10, 20 years into account. So what's the point of putting that kind of grandiose statement in the budget? Secondly, the other part of it, which is quite disturbing, is the weakening that she talks about, really, of the liability of the suppliers. In fact, that is the key point, which the American suppliers...
May I just stop you here? Let me read out the 2 paragraphs specifically. He said development of at least 100 gigawatt of nuclear energy by 2047.
Therefore, 100 plants of 1,000 megawatt capacity.
He said it's essential for India's energy transition efforts, for an active partnership with the private sector towards this goal. Amendments to the Atomic Energy Act and the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act will be taken up, and a nuclear energy mission for research and development of small modular reactors with an outlay of 20,000 crore will be set up, so that at least 5 indigenously developed small modular reactors will be operationalized by 2023.
Well, let's put it this way. The modular small reactors, well, it is still very much in development. Whether it's a viable project, these are viable projects or not, we don't know. If it succeeds, yes. But nuclear, as you know, is always a dangerous technology, and if you proliferate it in different hands, the risk of a nuclear accident is relatively higher. So there is a good reason why we chose larger sized plants. At least the fewer plants, the better it is. Modular reactors, as I said, we have to watch. But the point is 100 gigawatts means equivalent to 100,000 megawatt plants. As I said, and if you say you're going to do it with smaller reactors, the number of plants just grow. So that scale to promise in a national budget doesn't make any sense, because you're talking of this year's allocation. Now, why are you making this kind of claims in a budget speech? So all I'm saying is, it seems you're giving signals to probably Mr. Trump that Westinghouse and General Electric can come back to India and set up nuclear plants.
And maybe they won't go under.
Well, they already have. So one is a Japanese company, other is in liquidation. So all I'm saying is that you really, some 10 years behind
We are
times.
talking at a time when Mr. Donald J. Trump has increased the tariffs for Canada and Mexico by about 25%, but
each.
much less for China.
10%. So he is playing his cards that I have much closer interests than China.
Okay.
Which is, I have said, the Monroe Doctrine is back in place, that I need to control my hemisphere, and if I can do that...
Even if Greenland doesn't come to him and the Panama Canal is not controlled by him.
You say, the Greenland is part of the Monroe Doctrine, and Panama Canal is very much in his sight. So I think those are the things that you have to see, that if you take Trump and Mr. Modi into account, Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi, I think we are reading the tea leaves wrongly. Whatever signal you give, it doesn't really matter to him. He has very clear ideas, and that we have to leave for another day, because I think that's a very interesting discussion.
You know, we'll have another discussion, and I think we also need to discuss whether Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman and Mr. Narendra Modi is also will be lucky. You know, I mean, what have they assumed in the coming financial year that starts on the 1st of April? That gross domestic product, GDP, would go up in nominal terms by 10.1%. That is, the real rate of growth of GDP is about 6.4%, you're assuming, roughly speaking, 3.7% as an inflation rate, or what you might call a GDP deflator, which is around the wholesale price index. Are these assumptions realistic? Yes, they may well be. But at the end of the day, by ensuring that the fiscal deficit comes down steadily, as it has, the new capital expenditures that are taking place are really on infrastructure, on roads and stuff like that. And not so much, as we've already pointed out, on the social infrastructure, healthcare, education, and at the end of the day, job creation and creating a more equitable economy.
On that note, last point is at 6.4%, the current rate, you're nowhere close to 8%, which is what you are supposed to do if you want to reach the figure by another 20 years being a developed economy. So that's 2047, the target that's there. At this rate, 6.4%, you're not going to be there, probably not.
You know, the economic survey talks of so many things, very interesting things, including why we should not eat food which is high sugar, high fat, and high salt. But what is interesting is the chief economic advisor has made it very, very clear that GDP has to grow at constant prices, that is, by at least 8% on an average for almost 2 decades. If by the time India becomes 100 years old as a politically independent country, that's 2047, we become quote unquote Viksit or developed. Forget the 5 trillion economy by 2025. That's all over and gone.
Thank you, Paranjoy, for being with us, leading us through the difficult labyrinth of the budget. Numbers are always difficult for people. So I think you helped decode some of these figures, but I'm sure that we will have more discussions on
अगला
this.
साल हम सिर्फ हिंदी में आपके साथ बात करेंगे जैसे हमने किया. मेरा हिंदी कमज़ोर है.
मैं इसीलिए नहीं कर रहा था, जब इकोनॉमिक्स आ जाती है ना तो आधे शब्द वैसे भी अंग्रेजी की हो जाती है.
हाँ, कोई नहीं
ये
समझता.
problem.
सकल घरेलू उत्पाद, जीडीपी, ग्रॉस डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्ट, किसी को माने भी मालूम नहीं है, मतलब भी मालूम
हाँ,
नहीं है.
पर जीडीपी बोलने से लगता है कुछ समझ में आया. अब आपके घरेलू उत्पाद जो बोला आपने, उत्पाद लगता है. ठीक है ना. इसी बात पे आज हम इस चर्चा को बंद करते हैं. We will get back to you on more elaborations on different aspects of the economy and the budget as we go along.
Thank you for speaking with me, Prabir.
This is all the time we have today for NewsClick's discussions on the budget. Do keep following what NewsClick is doing and also visit our website, as well as, of course, the YouTube channel and the Facebook page.